Hello, everybody, and good morning. Happy Thursday. Today is Thursday, and I am so excited to be here and to bring you another Real Talk in our Real Talk series, looking into refugees, displaced people populations, as well as how dance can be used with those populations as a form of building community and building up the individual. So I'm just going to wait for a few people to hop on, and while that happens, I'm going to type and pin out our talk for the day. So I will start just saying thank you so much, Shawn, for joining today, and thank you for your time and what you're doing in the community. And I know that we had a few other people from the Chicago area who were joining before, and I referenced them to your program because they're interested in doing something similar. So it's really nice to know that there are other people out there who are doing dance, but they're interested in shifting it and using it more of a community initiative. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about what the difference between a community initiative and maybe a dance program that is run by a nonprofit looks like, because there are different logistical things involved. And as you were telling me earlier, it just kind of shifts how the program moves and grows and develops over time.
Sounds great. I look forward to it. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of this series. It's such an important series, and to connect people from different areas. It was such a privilege and an honor on our part as well. So thank you for this.
Of course, of course. Okay, so why don't we begin? So I'd like to introduce you all to Shawn Lent, and she is the founder of the community initiative Dance Peace Chicago. I actually was connected with her because one of the organizations, I think it's Traveling Tutus, that provides costumes for organizations like mine, also provided costumes for hers, and I reached out and I told her, this is such an amazing program, and I think it's so cool that you're able to do something and reach out to the vulnerable populations in the United States using dance and ballet. So our topic for the day is how community initiatives can create safe spaces and bridge cultural gaps between refugees and the local community. So could you give us a little sneak peek on who you are and what you've done in the past and how that led you to what you're doing right now?
Sure thing. Just before we start, I want to make sure I mention that I'm currently not in Chicago. For the week, I'm on vacation in Hale, Michigan, which I want to make sure I acknowledge the local tribe that founded this area, and that is the Anishinaabe people, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge those people of the lands on the cabin that I am taking a little respite in. So so now kicking in, my name is Shawn again, and I am the Programs and Communications Director for a nonprofit called Chicago Dance Makers Forum. We're a grant-making agency for professional dance makers in Chicago, and that's my main sort of day job. I'm also a dance educator. I'm also an arts writer, a blogger, a consultant, a guest lecturer, a facilitator, social practice artist, protester, dance demonstrator, a number of things. I founded the Dance Peace Initiative. It only had a name because in order to do a little bit of fundraising, and we were like, oh, we need a name for this. So it's called Dance Peace. And it was started in 2016, and I can give you some more on that.
Yeah. Awesome, yeah. And if you can also share how you decided to make this a community initiative instead of making it a nonprofit with a studio space that you have classes every, I don't know, 3 days a week or something like that.
Yeah. So Dance Peace was started in 2016. So previously I was a U.S. Fulbright scholar in Egypt and was teaching American dance forms as modern and jazz and some other social dances. And Fulbright was canceled because of what was happening there. I ended up staying years past the Fulbright program and got involved with artist activists in Egypt, moved back at the height of the presidential campaign in 2015, 2016. At that time, what was it? It was about 49–50% of refugees in Chicago were from countries that would, in the subsequent year, be named in the travel ban, predominantly Muslim countries. And I read a Gallup poll at that time that, let me just get my numbers right, but it was about 43% of Americans admitted that they felt at least a little prejudice against Muslims. And what was it? 22% said that they would not like to have a Muslim person as a neighbor. And I was reading these kind of numbers. I had married into a Muslim family, had lots of Muslim students and colleagues, and saw this happening in 2016 to a degree. For a number of years, almost a decade before going to Egypt, I had taught dance in a very diverse, culturally and ethnically and religiously diverse area of Northwest Chicago. Because I taught on Sundays, my students were predominantly Orthodox and Hasidic Jewish students, and I had learned from the community how to engage with conservatives, religious conservatives in dance. And teaching on Sundays, I was like, how can I get a lot of my Muslim friends and dancers and their children involved in the studio? It happened to be on the same day that the Orthodox and Hasidic students were dancing. A lot of them had never met someone else, nor was there any sort of trust. A lot of the refugees that were being resettled in the area were predominantly Muslim, and the neighbors were Hasidic Jewish, and there was, I mean, the libraries are separate, the 911 system is separate, like everything is separated, grocery stores.
Is that mostly because of a language barrier or because the cultures want to stay in their enclave?
Yeah, it's an insular society, especially the Hasidic Jewish group, and then the refugee populations are mostly for self-protection and to thrive. Some of that is communication driven, but there's so many, even, you know, we have 3 students who are from Ethiopia speaking different languages, right? So I think most of it was, you know, the Orthodox and Hasidic population, the community has found a way to thrive and to live and to build. The U.S. American system is not totally built to support that, right? We don't acknowledge the holidays, right? It's hard to live in, you know, the U.S. American society that's not built to support you. So if you built your own thing, you keep it in. One of my students, she'd been my student for 12 years. She told me she had never had an Arab friend. She already knew, and I was like, they're your neighbors. And, you know, and and then I also saw fear in a lot of the refugees' eyes because it's also a lot of homes are pro-Israel, and those signs are in everybody's yard, and have only heard negative things against Zionists or Israeli Americans or others. So there was this, you saw avoiding eye contact, moving to the other sidewalk. So there was this tension, and I saw an opportunity because I was deeply embedded sort of with both communities at that point to invite both communities into the dance studio. I saw from my other dance teachers that I was like, how many of your students are Muslim? How many hijabi teachers are out there in Chicago? And it was very limited, especially in mainstream dance education. There was like one hijabi teacher I knew, a lot of not space for hijabi students to feel comfortable, to feel welcome. Also, there wasn't a lot of modifications for conservatives, religious conservatives.
So like arm coverings.
Yeah, arm coverings, also knee-length skirts. Also, women-only audiences, things like that.
See, that's something very unique. And actually, can you maybe elaborate on where were these 2 communities dancing prior to you offering a space where they could dance together?
So what we do, so Dance Piece is a very flexible, responsive community initiative. It changes and fluctuates based on the assets, the needs, the wants, the ideas of those who are involved at the time. So some students and their families really want to integrate, right? Some wanted some safe space to meet and to bond with their friends coming from the same countries. They don't see them necessarily at school. Some wanted to follow their natural ability. They want to be professional dancers. So I started by working with mutual aid societies and my friends who were dance movement therapists for the refugee resettlement agencies to work with case managers to identify, who would be interested in a scholarship so they get an ongoing class, right? At the same time, we had a number of other initiatives. So we worked with teens and young women who are, those who are femme presenting, ages like 15 to 25. We had a program for them. Recently, we did a program for migrants and refugees and asylees who are professional adult artists. Back in the day, we also did workshops for refugee resettlement agencies in whatever they wanted. So a lot of them wanted English fluency. And I was like, oh, we can do English fluency in dance. We can, of course, do that. We also we offered Arab and Western music on different instruments. So we've been able to kind of fluctuate. If they're doing summer programming, we're able to come in and offer dance at their facility, with the refugee resettlement agencies, even volunteering, with the free store. There's a free store for refugees, So we work to be in the community. If there's refugee picnics, refugee celebrations, we're volunteering, we're there, we're offering dance in all the spaces that are refugee-led, right? So
That's
that's
really
been,
incredible.
yeah.
Because you're really observing, identifying where you could integrate, and then seeing if the responses that they want you to be there and offering your services and being present. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important, especially when there are tensions between cultures, because you don't know if what maybe you think could be helpful is what the community actually needs or wants. And that's something that that your organization is really demonstrating, how to be able to respectfully respect, how to be able to approach a culture that requires a different set of even dance aware, or how they're going to move because maybe you need a different type of costume, and then really not seeing that as a negative thing or a barrier, but integrating it and using it in the dance program that you have and are continuing to provide, while really connecting children that maybe didn't think that they would have been able to become friends because they avoid them when they're walking in the street. As you said, they pass to the other sidewalk. That is very dramatic, and it's such a physical response to avoid a threatening or maybe a scary situation.
Yeah, there's some years it's been a direct integration. Other years or other semesters, we've done a separate program for people to explore their own stories and their own dances. Currently, the program is for children ages 7 to 12. It's a weekly program, predominantly female identified, predominantly Muslim identified, but not exclusively. Often from Myanmar, Syria, Iraq, and Ethiopia, but there are several others, and it's a bit of a transition time. We also offer ride shares, collaborative workshops, one-off things. We do public performances in the community. We just virtually participated in World Refugee Day Chicago and made our own dance videos.
Awesome.
We do things that are very public, like at the mall, and then we also do like split audiences, women-only audience experiences. We do try to offer work and training opportunities for refugees and indigenous youth. So I want to make sure that I stop for just a minute and say that this is definitely a we thing. So shout out, credit goes to Annika, who was one of the founding young people who's just like, oh, we should keep doing this, and would donate her Christmas money every year, right? And has
Oh, that's so sweet.
volunteered. I think this is her third year of just volunteering every week, being
Mhm.
there in many ways. Farsana, who does not come from a dance background, wanted to be involved, and she's made a huge commitment to the group. We pay all our apprentice teachers, so we're trying to build opportunities for young people who are from indigenous or refugee circumstances to build a career in dance education or in this work, if they're interested in that. So it's a paid teen apprentice program. I'll shout out to Jihei, who was part of that program, who's now on the road to her starting her collegiate career.
Yay!
That's really exciting in dance. So we're excited and thankful to her. We're thankful to the parents. Shout out to Amy. She is she's in a refugee community and family herself, but also has a role in a full-time job at a refugee resettlement agency, and has really stepped up to volunteer, to connect, to get the word out, to let us know when people are sick, what's happening here, who needs this. If we want to do social media posts for Eid, making sure that the message is correct in Burmese language, so helping to translate, helping to connect resources, especially during COVID. I had one student who texted me like, why isn't there class? Why is no one picking me up? And I was a little bit taken aback that this was in April, and it was a moment of like, oh, people are not getting information on the basics of what the lockdown is, how to get rent relief, how to get food. So the mothers and the fathers have been great in not only rideshare, but communicating, getting the dance videos to everybody.
Yeah.
So for all of the volunteers, the first couple of years we had volunteers that were students from the Middle East who were graduate students in engineering and finance, who ended up almost running the program. Like they could do the dance themselves and ran rehearsal. So all of these people make the program, right? And then the dancers themselves. So Sama, Resh, they helped design the program. Sama was, she's from Syria. She recently moved, but she told me something really, really profound, that dance is great because it's the art form that goes with you wherever you go, right? And she's the one we should be doing Nutcracker. Like
Oh,
and I was like,
Nutcracker.
what? And she's like, all the rest of the community do this community Nutcracker every year. We need to be, and I was like, oh, it's a lot of added rehearsal. It's a little controversial in its content, especially second act. And she's like, and you're a little behind on technique, and she's like, we're gonna do it. So she was the first one. She made it happen. We worked, and then the following year, last year, we had the whole group as junior flowers, and it was such an important experience to be part of such a big community production. And that was because one student decided this was an experience that she deserved, and that it became part of the program, right? So it's also the students. So I want to make sure that it's that because it is a community initiative, like it changes all the time. There's not a consistency. And when we come up with barriers, the original studio we were at closed, and we had a big cut rate of tuition. So we could get students into all these into classes, and it could be integrated. The new studio couldn't give us, it made sense. They could not give us that tuition break, but they could give us a free hour. So it was like, okay, if we're going to be sort of segregated, and how can we build energy there? Who can we
So to
invite?
clarify, a free
Yeah.
studio space hour. So you can have a studio space for an hour where you can teach and do
Yeah.
your thing, and they will not charge you.
Yes. Yeah. That's the case now. But because of COVID now, it looks like we're going to go back to the integration model, right? So
Mm.
it keeps changing depending on circumstances and a number of things. And because we are not a nonprofit, right, that it's the people involved that are the stakeholders. They are the ones making decisions. They are the ones, I have a student who every week, I swear, she brings somebody new. They just show up. She finds someone in her apartment complex who is like,
She's like,
they
let's dance, let's
come
go.
on. They come in the car and there's somebody new coming, right?
Mhm.
And we also, we go see public performances so people know what resources are in the area. We participate in local festivals so they can see professional dance resources so the whole families get involved. And sometimes like, oh, we're doing this now. Okay, I'm following, right? Um,
Definitely.
I saw a meme
I
today
have,
that
if
said
I could,
oh yeah, sorry. Just
sorry.
last thing, I ramble, so you do have to stop me. Um, but I saw a meme today that said the revolution will not have a nonprofit status.
That's true. That's true, right?
So
Because
yeah,
also the thing is when you become a solid organization, then it's not the people who are moving exactly what happens because then the
yeah,
people in charge are the ones who are making the decisions. I
yeah.
did want to go back before we stray a little far from it and just actually have you explain the benefits and challenges for the children when they're in an integrated dance program versus when they have their own separate dance program, and also how dance therapists can add value to a program. Because I know this week I had received a few questions asking how to start a program if it's just me and I'm not exactly sure who to reach out to or where the children are, and I'm not sure if I'm looking to teach them myself or kind of get a studio involved with these children. So I think you can address that very well.
Yeah. Let me get started. First one, I'll shout out to the Obadat family. Mohammed, I see you on here. Yay! Good to see you. We've been missing you for a long time since you had to move. So I hope to reconnect virtually. So good to see you here. Um,
Welcome.
Yay! Let's see. I think our goals kind of stay the same. Um,
Hmm.
so one goal is reduction of prejudice and defensiveness, this sense of kinetic empathy, and that can be done when people are separate or when they're together.
Hmm.
And so I think that happens in either circumstance, any
Hmm.
context. We also look to have more spontaneity, a release of inhibition, and you can
Hmm.
see that in the extent of physical expression. Um, and then again, you can see that in their own class or when they're in relationship in an intergroup experience. You can see proximity, you can see physical trust, you can see how much they take. We always talk about you deserve space, taking up
Hmm.
space, the importance of your artistic voice. And that happens for all my students, but in particular, that's a goal of this program, no matter what it looks like. Um, Dance technique and knowledge, having those foundations. We always ask the parents and families what they want. Often they all want ballet because of
Hmm.
its international reputation. I think there is a notion that it does something, especially for people who identify as girl or female, that ballet is something, it has a status, especially in the Middle East. I knew this from Egypt. There's an elitism, there's a status that comes, a class status that comes with ballet.
Hmm.
And it's foundational, it's colonial experience.
I apologize. My internet went out and then I tried to connect with my data and then it didn't connect. And so I am using somebody else's internet right now. Borrowing.
I was listing sort of the kind of the goals and challenges.
Yes.
So I guess there's like three more ish. One is social confidence, especially in
Hmm.
English. We've had some of our students who are pretty fluent. Some of them are very new arrivals. Some have been there about 3 to 5 years ish. That's usually the framework, and are ready to sort of take on these new challenges. But they're also at this level of when they're helping their parents with some very important things like eviction notices, car
Mm-hmm.
insurance, right? They're dealing with some adult subject matter in terms of communication, translation.
Yeah.
Um, so confidence in English with their peers is a little bit different, but also the having the parents, especially the lobby experience, was always really important. Of the parents meeting and sharing space and sharing supplies, right? So a lot of these are not just for the students, they're for their families, right? So these goals, if you expand them, they're to their families and their communities, and also mine and the
Mm-hmm.
apprentice teachers. We're all growing together. So it's not me as a benefactor or some sort of charity, right? They are
I see
teaching
a lot
me.
of, I'm sorry. I see we have a
Yeah.
lot of people joining in right now, just so that we can tell them what we're talking about. It's a new
Yeah,
live.
please.
So we're here with Shawn Lent, and she's talking to us about her community initiative program, in which she works with refugee children populations from, you said, Africa and Arabic countries, and she also works with populations of children from Hasidic Jew and orthodox Jewish communities, and she really creates a space for them to dance together and to be able to understand that it's okay for them to take space. Right now we're going through all of the important factors of their program. And also one unique thing that we discussed in our previous live before the internet cut us off is that the community initiative seek, oh wow, I was about to not speak in English. The community initiative aspect means that they're continuously growing and taking on the suggestions of all of the different players involved, whether they're young high school volunteers or the parents or herself or other dance educators that really want to offer what the community is interested in as far as dance, and just really supporting the children where they're at while bridging the gap that they do have because of the cultural tensions between these two communities. As she did mention, even in the neighborhoods themselves, they might have a neighbor that is Arabic, but that doesn't mean that they have any Arabic friends, the children, and they might even walk to the other side of the sidewalk to avoid conflict and contact. And so the topic of today is how community initiatives can create safe spaces and bridge cultural gaps between refugees and the local community. So take it away, Sean. Sorry, had to give the intro to everyone who's joining.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. Um, yeah, so as we spoke, sometimes this is happening, it's intentional, and sometimes, this idea of integration, um, it's not in people's faces. It's just an opportunity, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes, it's not like, oh, Arab Muslims and Jews or South Asian as well are going to get along, and this is a normalization project. We had Palestinian dancers who came and visited for Debka workshops and performances, and it is not a normalization activity. It's just a natural sort of thing of getting to know one another. And sometimes we're in separate spaces, sometimes we're in the same space, sometimes we're really together intentionally, and sometimes it's just an offering in a space, right? So the one of the goals is a sense of security and trust for everybody in the neighborhood. Another is in the studio and on the street, on the sidewalk, in the store, on the bus. You're not going to have someone pull your hijab. In 2016, we had anti-Semitic graffiti on like 30 family garages. We had one
Wow.
mother who had
Oh,
her
that,
hijab pulled on the bus, right?
oh
So a
man.
sense of security and trust, and then just being in the space to be vulnerable. Brian Stevenson often talks about the privilege and the civil right to be vulnerable, to not always have your guard
Mhm.
up, to be able to question yourself, but also find joy, find a positive mood, to lessen or learn to deal with your anxiety. When
Yes.
it comes to trauma, we do have a trauma-informed practice, but we
Mhm.
work with dance movement therapists who are working in the
Mhm.
community to help address those. We don't do anything therapeutic ourselves. Long term, we're
Mhm.
looking for a healthy neighborhood with an ecology of trust and entrepreneurship in the arts and
Mhm.
beyond. One mother wanted to make costumes. right? One dad was inspired to get back on the keyboard. He was a keyboardist, a professional musician in Syria, and had gone
Yeah.
5, 6 years without touching the keyboard and wanted to get back into it and start his own music school. So hopefully it inspires other people to be involved with dance or not, but to be in their art form, to build networks and relationships so that we can share resources and barriers and problems. These two communities actually often face very similar problems from sometimes the same sources. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and then
Could you
just
maybe
my
give an example of
personal,
one of those?
um, I think, for example, when COVID-19 hit, this community was one of the hotspots of cases, and there was a
Uh,
lot of blame, and they were
oh.
blaming it's because those Muslim immigrants, those Hasidic Jews, they're not, they're not social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not wearing masks. They live too close together. They don't believe in science. All these crazy, none of it's true, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Or I saw them had a party. They had a party. It's all their fault, right? So there
yes.
was a lot of that in March and April, and I was like, I'm in this. What are you talking about? Or if it is a problem, how do we work with the community in the neighborhood to keep
Mm-hmm.
people safe without
Mm-hmm.
blaming or what are they saying in the mosque? They're saying it in
Mm-hmm.
the temple, right? So sometimes the
Yes.
communities actually face very similar things.
Mm-hmm.
And then helping people find their own unique voice. And my own goal is to help religious conservatives and Muslim and Jewish conservatives, especially, but not exclusively. We also have Muslims who are not necessarily, they're a little bit more liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have, people across the spectrum in terms of faith, and some who are non-believers. So it's not faith based on that, but I would love to see more, embrace of hijabi dancers, of more space and opportunity for orthodox Jewish dancers, right? So I do have my own personal agenda to help make those spaces, but the program's not designed
Right.
with those
But
goals.
in
It's just
the
a personal thing.
Yes, but because of the nature of your program, that you are working with two communities that are very conservative religiously, you are creating these spaces, and the religion is what defines so many people, and it's what defines these communities, which is why their communities are based on what their
Yeah.
religion's name is, right? And so, just as part of what is the nature of the beast, right? You're getting to the crux of like these tensions, these cultural tensions, and addressing them, not maybe directly, but addressing them because you're addressing dance and you're showing kids that their value is seeing each other for who they are and what they can do in dance and together in movement. Because so much, especially when you're preparing for a recital, you might not think of it. I know we have dancers right now on the call. You might not always think of it, but when kids are moving and learning together, it's such an individual and a group effort. And also, so much research is coming out in the neuroscience area showing that like children from trauma can heal, and it has to do a lot with having a supportive environment and having people who are positively encouraging you. And especially, you say you're working with like dance therapists, that is so important to be able to identify and be able to address certain situations and also have the advice to be able to move forward as a dance teacher that's informed and best serving the community, especially if they are refugee children coming from high trauma. And also, if anyone wants to ask questions, feel free to ask your questions and leave them in the comments. And Shawn would love to answer them. I would love to answer them. Uh, yep, no question is not accepted. So, Shawn, you can continue.
Yeah, when I think of barriers, I'm probably speaking to our current barriers. You know, try technology. We've encountered that today, um, and you know, when we went into lockdown, some of our communication systems got splintered a little bit. A lot of it's word of mouth, or, you know, a lot of texting. And those devices in the home became priority for a number of things. So they became important for how do we communicate about our rent, right? How do we communicate about getting food, schooling? So all the things that this device is trying to do, and do it in several languages with several people, case managers, different teachers. So a lot of times I was texting about dance class, and it was like somebody's brother or somebody, like, who's on the device. I think communication got splintered. And then I was noticing, as I was saying, that some of our students didn't know like the basics of what was happening with COVID-19, right? So those barriers became really important. And it was happening right during like Ramadan, Eid, coming out of that. There was a lot of like trying to figure out all of that. We did a lot of recording. So another site of Dance Piece. So Dance Piece is not just this program, it's also any site of neighborhood tension. We have another site that's in public housing in a real racially gentrified area. And those teachers help to create content. So those apprentice teachers were all paid to develop online dance programming. Our partners created a web page with all of these dance classes so kids could do them anytime. And they were in several dance forms: West African, J-set, ballet, creative movement for all ages. So then we were able to make this web page of all these free dance classes from the teachers they know, available to both sites, for example. But you know, if the kids have time to do them, do they know this exists? And now a big thing is transportation. You've talked about it sort of this whole series. We do ride shares, and that's not going to be possible. Some of the families have had a COVID positive person in the family who've you know, has been sick. So that's an issue. Yeah, communication. So we had a large donation, $500. We were able to get food to our families, grocery gift cards, food supplies, working with other food distributors, coming into in-person classes. We're going to try to do it every other week starting in the fall. And we have bags made so they can have the sense of pride. Usually they kind of dive into our big donated dancewear. So now they're getting new shoes, new tights,
That's amazing.
new Leo with sleeves and skirt, and a mask. And it all goes in their bag that they own, that they will now take home and bring back with them. And most likely it will be an integrated class, but they can choose what they would like to do. And we're doing a Nutcracker the movie. So it will be a nice experience, including with animation, and that will be exciting. We probably will not have a lot of new students. We'll see where we are in the winter with expanding the program. So we'll probably be down to 4 to 8 students, you know, but offering support, volunteering with the refugee community, also protesting with them, been making sure that we're political advocates as well as making statements. You know, we do have South Asian, Arab, Black, African, students, dancers, families that are our allies. We're along with each other. So it's not just like, come join my dance program. I'm going to be in your space. I take classes from them when I can. I'm a neighbor. I'm a resident. I'm not holding a program and inviting people to my table, that I'm joining their table as much as possible, and we can build a table together is the goal.
Yeah. So in summary, you are a community initiative dance program umbrellaed under a larger program for refugee communities. And within this dance initiative, which is community run, you're not only offering teaching them how to plie and turn and do jazz pas de bourrées, but you're also there walking alongside them when they need to protest for their rights or are looking at how to figure out rent and situation or need help with maybe translating, teaching English classes, communicating within the parents so they can understand new news sources that are coming. Is that correct? Is that a good summary?
Yeah, you got cut off a little bit there, but yeah, and it's always in partnership. So we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly in partnership with people who are doing this. A
Mm-hmm.
goal of mine is never to duplicate or to compete with
Mm-hmm.
people that are doing the work. Like if I have a nonprofit and I'm trying to fundraise or I'm come to my party, that's sometimes detrimental or harmful. Sometimes
I
it's been,
completely agree. You don't always
yeah,
have to
yeah.
recreate the wheel. Sorry, continue.
So yeah, so connecting people like who could help, like when I heard, oh, this person, and then talking to their case manager. Maybe their case manager already knows,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not, maybe they trust me because of a deeper relationship, but I know somebody who's a lawyer over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or their case manager knows much more than I do and can
Mm-hmm.
help get a translator to tell them when the dance class is, when they can expect a ride. So I'm asking for help probably twice as much as I'm offering.
Okay.
And that's it. It's connecting these, like, oh, they need this. Um, do you already have it? I need some help with this. So it's putting the pieces together, and not offering something that is a competition or something, forcing myself into a system that's trying to thrive and survive in a very difficult situation. Yeah, yeah,
It's a great point. And I think that a lot of people who might be looking at what type of organization they want to start need to kind of consider that. I know it's something that I had to think about before I decided to move forward with my program as it did because it was organically growing very fast. Kind of deciding, is there somebody that I can partner with that I can walk alongside them supporting the local community instead of starting my own thing that might not even be necessary and be a complete waste of resources because if you are your own program you need to have the administrative portion down and who is going to teach, but if you can collaborate and have someone teach in multiple locations then you might not even need to create your own program. And that also honestly is something that you have to ask yourself, am I doing this for the community or am I doing this for myself to have a program that I want to be in charge of and run. And it's a question you have to ask yourself very honestly if you're looking at starting a program. Is it a need within the community and does it already exist? And if it does, could you join that program instead of starting your own thing?
yeah, for sure. I think my first question every time is, hey, what do you guys need? And then so often I'm like, oh, dance can do that.
Yes, dance can
Yeah.
do so much.
And then sometimes, you're like, actually, maybe they just need someone who has a little bit of Arabic who can be in the community store on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
They also, sometimes, especially in dance, um, we other people, right? A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you're fasting during Ramadan? Oh, I'm gonna have to change the schedule, right? Or like, we're all gonna see a show on Friday. Let's go. We're having a field trip. Oh, you can't go. It's the Sabbath. Like, there's this thing like we just assume, right? So, our program likes to assume that, we will not have things on Fridays and Saturdays, right?
Mm-hmm.
We will mostly in, the um, for our participants, they to make it accessible, we don't do things on Fridays, Saturdays, or early Sunday morning. So it gives people room for that. We don't do things on, you know, um, on Kwanzaa, but we also don't do things on Yom Kippur, right? That it's just naturally part of our schedule. That we will have costume accommodations and choices. If you want to wear, we had one woman who in the program who designed like a silver sequin hijab. It was so gorgeous. So if you want, the assumption is we will cover elbows and knees, but you don't have to. Some even, we have Muslim students who are fine with a tank, right? We have Jewish students who are fine with a shorter skirt and dancing in front of men, right? So there's no assumptions, but the only assumption is that we have these accommodations and they're available and we're aware, and it's not strange or weird or, you can do your hair however it works as long as it's out of your face. No one has to chemically straighten anything. Like it's just an assumption that we value you, and there's nothing strange or odd if you need to do something different in terms of costume, in terms of being in the space, in terms of staying healthy, in terms of your father, your dad, your brother. Like there's no assumptions, and nothing is strange or weird or like, oh, we have to do something different for you, right? That's one thing we will always avoid. Yeah.
And that's something that's a hot topic right now in the dance community, talking about hair specifically, but natural black hair, and how many companies maybe require it to be treated a certain way and put up a certain way. But in your program, you're saying like since forever, we've accepted that people are different in their needs and how God created them, and we're going to allow you to dance with us no matter how you need to prepare yourself for the recital presentation. So that's amazing. Also, I see that Jana is here from the nation's refugee outreach program, which is a program that works with refugee children and families in the Dallas, Texas area. And I know before I was talking with her about how to create a dance program that is consistent, has consistent attendance, and where you can communicate clearly with the parents and have the children kind of have that discipline and learn that discipline that for dance and to progress in it, you need to consistently show up and you can be proud of it and reach goals. I'm not sure if you can maybe speak to that and other programs that are looking to make their dance program more formal and have kids be able to continuously attend and just have that communication clearly with the parents.
So when people register, we usually make it very clear that you are registering for like a semester, so a couple months. You're going to join? Great. You get all of these free things. You just need to make sure that your student gets here. That's the only requirement. And then, it goes until early December that you have to commit to that. And it's usually, like late September, early October. So it's a couple months window, and that's the commitment. And if a student is ever missing, we are texting, we are calling right away. We have usually that's one apprentice's whole job is to communicate. And usually it's now such a requirement that I'll get texts like, oh, she's not feeling well, or there's something happening with her confidence today. She's has a new haircut and she's afraid people will say something, right? So usually the parents are telling me, like, if there's a reason. And because of all the ride shares, usually if there's someone missing, they know. Like the parents, the volunteer drivers, the volunteer translators will know, and they talk within themselves. And usually we have the problem of additional kids coming versus, and then it's an expectation. We always have a performance that we're working towards. And when kids know that they're going to be public with their peers, and the families are, they're putting on pressure. Like you're the face, a public face. You're not only representing yourself, you're representing, Rohingyans. You are, there's this extra weight to be in public performing as a refugee, as a Muslim, as a person of color. You know, there's a lot of weight for a child to be in a public space carrying all of that in physical being, right? So I think that the pressure, like to be like the focus is crazy because they know, like, and that's what we actually have to get over is like okay to make mistakes, like to be out there. So because they already know what the goal is, they know that they're going to be in public. It's got a limited scope. It's only a couple months. And that there's always new sort of free things or opportunities or resources that they're seeing the value, not only the student, but the whole family is seeing value. And that we're listening to them, we're hearing them out. If there's a problem, someone can't come, let's address that problem. Free trips, you know, there's a lot of things that usually they come back, and they also come back in the spring and the summer. And for students who can't because the family's work schedule changed or something, we try to accommodate, sometimes successful, sometimes not, but they usually finish a year, sometimes 2, 3 years, and that's fine. And yeah, so usually if someone moves out of the neighborhood or something like that, they can no longer continue. But in general, there is a commitment. Some of them are there, and their goal is to get, you know, into a training program, and they want to really pick up that technique. And some just don't want to embarrass themselves in the show, and that's their goal, is to just have some fun and to put together something they're proud of. And those two things work together. So if someone's there for training and wants to learn ballet and the language, and someone wants to explore and try other dance forms, we do go beyond ballet, even though we start with ballet, that those students can work well in a space together. It also helps bring some good energy when you're so focused in the training, to have some people that are like, hey, what about if we did this? I was like, yes, 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 yes. Like having those two energies, actually really, it helps both. It helps focus, but also not take ourselves so seriously and explore our natural interest and curiosities.
Oh, amazing. And also having the goal of a dance performance. I'm sure a lot of students, if they hadn't been in some type of arts or science fair, it might be their first time performing in public. Is that true in your case?
Yeah, often. And often we're entering spaces that them and their families have never been in the city or in the
Wow.
community. So like, I've never been on a stage, or I've never been on this kind of stage, or I've never been in this part of the neighborhood, or, you know, I've never been in the mall, you know.
Wow.
So there's some of that. And some of it, like, I've never worn a tutu. And I just
Yes.
want that tutu experience, right? There's something about the validation of being taken seriously as a dancer. And that's where, you know, traveling tutus came in. I was like, they deserve, you know, they deserve that moment and that feeling. And being taken seriously as dancers, even if they've only had 1 or 2 years of training, or even a couple months. I mean, they're performing publicly within their first 2 months, right? We always do
That's
Devon's Got
great.
Talent. Devon's Got Talent, right? That's in November, right? So if they start late September, we're already doing a public performance in November. Often the kids are following an apprentice teacher, but that happens super early. And the feeling of working towards something, here's the costume, here's a response from my community, and here's me being applauded and
Yes.
welcomed. And that usually carries on for the rest of the year. So we often do a very early performance, just so that,
Awesome.
it is a little bit addicting, right? We've all been there. You have your first show and you're like, what, that feeling, like, and not only for the process we are process driven, but there's that performance is part of research, is part of process. So we continually do that. So I know we're figuring out time a little bit, and I'm a rambler, but I appreciate you tolerating my rambling.
Oh, I think that all the information you're sharing is so amazing. And also, I know a few people told me they couldn't make it at this time slot, so they'll be able to watch it afterwards. And all the comments that you're making are so helpful for anyone interested in maybe doing a similar program or trying to figure out how they can become part of a program in their area, because you don't have to be a school teacher to impact children's lives. You can use your talents as a dancer or as a musician, or even with coordination, as you were saying. You have students who are studying engineering, but they're involved in this dance program helping coordinate. They can help with translation, just really finding how you can use all of the many talents and abilities you might have to support a program that exists or start an initiative if there's nothing in your area. And and I don't know if you have any, let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I don't know if you have any last comments you'd like to share. Also, if anybody who's watching now wants to add any questions before we close this real talk.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say is, again, this idea of like duplicating or competing. Thinking about my unique contributions as a neighbor and a resident. I do teach primarily Western dance forms, and that's my contribution. So where does that fit, right? And how does it fit into the puzzle versus like impeding and power hoarding, right? So how can I share power? So making sure that you go to the mutual aid societies, go to the refugee resettlement agencies, listen to the refugees themselves, because not all refugee resettlement agencies are equal, and how they use government funds sometimes are actually detrimental, or how they treat refugees. So listen to the families, talk to case managers, talk to their teachers, go to their protests, go to their demonstrations, follow them in their advocacy. What are they fighting for? What the Syrian Community Network is doing right now is phenomenal. And they are trying, to re-increase our refugee numbers in the country. They've been decimated. The refugees who've been resettled, the numbers are so low, it feels inhumane as U.S. Americans, right? So that's what they're fighting for. And how can we back them? How can we help? What do they need right now? What are they offering? Do they have language classes? Are they trying to sell t-shirts? Like, how can you boost, amplify what people are doing? And what is your unique contribution? So I'm not going to offer West African dance classes, but there's a young teenager that wants to do that just needs more teaching experience, and she wants to be an apprentice for a couple months and then build her own West African class, so I can help her build workshops and get our students involved, and then make it a formal class, working with other West African teachers in Chicago, right? So making connections, and not power hoarding, not being the central focus, but being you do have something to contribute, right? And that's, I contribute something, that's what I contribute. And sometimes it's a good fit, and sometimes I'm like, I just need to take a step in class and bow out, right? So find out where you are helpful and where you are harmful. Yeah. I guess that would be the last thing.
Yeah, everything that you've shared with us has been so insightful and helpful, I think, and also even for my program too. And one beautiful opportunity that you do have in the United States is that you can voice your opinion without threat on your family or your relatives or your neighbors, and you can be there. Well, more so than
Yeah, for sure.
countries in Latin America where I am, for example.
Yeah, I
So
was in
you
Egypt for
have the
4
opportunity.
years. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another level. Yeah. But in the United States, you
on
can
that
support.
note, we should.
Mhm.
On that note, we should I'll personally give my thoughts and condolences to the families who lost someone in Kenosha, and to all of any protesters that are now afraid, especially here in the Midwest. So thoughts to Kenosha is where I would want to land. While it is a First Amendment right, it is a scary time moving into November here in the
Oh yes,
U.S.
definitely.
American cities. While it's not Egypt and it's not Guatemala, I do want to give space and voice to those who lost someone in Kenosha. So
Yeah, definitely difficult. And well, also, if somebody feels like they want to make a change and hold the hands of those who are going through the situations, it's your program's community initiative is such a great example on how you can do that in many different ways. You know, you were talking about you're there to help support them when legislation needs to be changed, and you're there to help them when they're doing their drives or whatever it is. So activism can look very different. It can look like teaching a
yeah,
dance class. It can look like visiting their home. It can look like translating for them. So I thank you
yeah.
for being there in all these different facets.
And the refugee families are sometimes can't voice things themselves. They still have like family left in Syria. And if they voice
Mm,
something in a certain way, their family is still in a threat or threatened
ah,
in Syria.
mm-hmm,
People know each other, so sometimes, and they're trying to, make find work. So sometimes trying to, just be here as new American neighbors. They sometimes are like very thankful, especially that white people like myself can help voice things where sometimes they are under threat and can't voice, and sometimes they are the voice and they just need backup, right?
yeah.
And sometimes that's in dance, sometimes that is totally separate, but we're still neighbors and we're still friends in the studio and outside. So I'm a rambler, but thank you, thank you.
Thank you for your time, and I appreciate having you on this Real Talk series. I think it's going to be so insightful and educational for many people who are going to watch this afterwards. I know a lot of dance educators have asked me, are you going to save these because the times don't work? So thank you so much. Oh, there's a comment. Yes, talking about how
Yeah.
your call was so thankful and informative and educational. So I hope you have a beautiful rest of your Thursday, Shawn. I appreciate your time and all you're doing in your community. Thank you, everyone who is watching live and who's going to watch afterwards. And God bless you all and have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shukran.
See you all tomorrow at the next Real Talk series.